Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Triple Play Fantasy YouTube channel. I'm your host here, Jacob Dunn, and today I'm going to be going over popular fantasy players you should think about dropping heading into your fantasy playoffs. Of course, if you have an open IL spot and you're stashing one of the following guys and it's not hurting your team, then by all means keep them. But if any of the following guys are costing you an active roster spot, it's time to drop for a streamer or hot free agent. All right, we can't hold anything back in the playoffs. We need healthy guys now. All right, and before I go on, make sure to check your fantasy league's playoff schedule. All right, some leagues have already started their playoffs. Some leagues start in week 20, and some leagues start in week 21. So knowing when your league's playoffs start and end should make your decision even easier when deciding who to keep or who to drop. All right, so first up are players rostered in 70% or above in Yahoo leagues, whom shouldn't be held onto if you're fighting for your playoff lives. All right, and first up is Anthony Davis. All right, Anthony Davis's injury-riddled season continued after suffering a mid-foot sprain against the Jazz last month. The 28-year-old is expected to be back in 4 to 5 weeks, which would put him on track to either return in week 23 or week 24, but that's not even a guarantee. All right, next up, we got Damian Lillard. As of February 27th, the Blazers announced that Lillard will be reevaluated in 2 to 3 weeks. So Dame will be reevaluated either the start of week 21 or 22 to see if he is even healthy enough to put a target date on his return. While there's incentive to get Dame back on the court with Portland battling for the 10th spot in the Western Conference, I don't see the Blazers putting him back out there at less than 100%, and we've seen Lillard struggle with his abdomen injury all season. So make the cut and move on. And next up, we got Paul George. As of February 25th, the Clippers head coach Ty Lue said that George remains without a timetable to return. He goes on to say that he isn't sure whether the 31-year-old will be able to return prior to the end of the season. Now, he has made progress with his elbow according to a recent MRI, but not as much as the Clippers have hoped. With Kawhi Leonard not returning at all this season and the Clippers fire selling their team at the deadline, this looks like a lost season for George, and managers should cut bait if they need the roster spot. And next up, we got Jusuf Nurkic. As of February 23rd, the Portland Trailblazers announced that Nurkic will miss at least 4 weeks due to left foot plantar fasciitis. So best case scenario, Nurkic returns in the middle of week 22. All right, worst case scenario is that the Blazers call it quits if they fall behind in the standings without Nurkic and Dame and just sit him for the rest of the season. All right. So I see the latter happening as Portland seems to be content with playing for lottery balls. All right. Cut Nurkic. Next up, we got Zion Williamson. What a strange season it's been for the former number 1 overall pick. He has suffered multiple setbacks since having surgery on his foot over the summer and has been constantly in the news, whether it's for his weight or questions about his commitment to the Pelicans. Either way, I don't see a scenario where he returns to the court this season, especially with the most recent report saying that he may require a second procedure to address complications in his recovery from right foot surgery. Honestly, I made the drop back in December when COVID was running rampant on the league, and I needed that roster spot. And if you're watching this and you still have him on your team, feel free to give a little extra oomph when you press the drop button. All right, next we got Chris Paul. As of February 20th, David Aldridge of The Athletic reported that Chris Paul has an avulsion fracture to his right thumb and is slated to miss 6 to 8 weeks. Okay, best case scenario is Paul is back by Sunday, April 3rd, which wouldn't be ideal for 99% of fantasy leagues out there. Even if you play in the 1% of leagues that go past April 3rd, the point guard isn't even guaranteed to return by then. And I believe the Phoenix Suns are only interested in bringing him back for the NBA playoffs, which means you should make the cut in fantasy leagues. All right, next up are players that you should only consider dropping if you are currently fighting for a playoff spot or a bye week. Okay, so first up, we got Kristpas Porzingis. All right, Porzingis has been sidelined for 13 consecutive games. While he's practicing in limited capacity, there's no guarantee when he's coming back. Don't be afraid to drop if you need someone now. And Lonzo Ball has made excellent recovery from knee surgery and has a hopeful date to return in the middle of week 21. Only hold if you have a bye week or an extra IL spot. And OG Anunoby, look, if you have a playoff spot and seeding locked up, then keep Anunoby for now. Latest reports have him not requiring surgery, and he seems to be day-to-day as of now. It's a pain tolerance issue as of now, so he could return any day now, but it's no guarantee. And Myles Turner. Turner has a shot at returning sometime in week 20 or 21, so he's not a full-blown drop. But from my perspective, why would Indiana bring back Turner when they're 9 games back from the 10th seeded Hawks? Okay, his 9-cat skills of threes and blocks keep him from being an outright cut, but it also wouldn't surprise me if he missed the rest of the season. And Caris LeVert. LeVert is expected to miss another week or so due to a sprained right foot. Foot injuries are tough to overcome, and the Cavs have enough cushion to rest him until he's 100%. And then Gordon Hayward. As of February 23rd, Hayward remains out indefinitely, which isn't something fantasy managers like to hear. The team has yet to put a firm timetable on his return, so with that uncertainty, don't let Gordon cause you an active roster spot. And Michael Porter Jr., while latest reports have him joining the G League this week, I just don't see a scenario where Porter significantly helps out your fantasy team. If you have the room and you are okay with being brought on extremely slow throughout your fantasy playoffs, then by all means keep stashing him. But I'm personally not going to rely on someone recovering from back surgery to make an impact for my fantasy team in the playoffs. Hard pass. And then Norman Powell. Powell broke his toe back on February 13th, and there's no timetable for his return. With Leonard out and George seemingly out the rest of season, I don't see the Clippers rushing back Powell this season. He's an easy cut for me, but since he hasn't been rolled out officially, I understand if you want to keep him if you have the room. All right, and this section are just players who should be dropped regardless of IL spots or anything like that, and that's Kawhi Leonard and Bradley Beal. Head coach Ty Lue has already said that Leonard isn't going to play this year, and Bradley Beal has been ruled out for the remainder of the season after getting surgery on his wrist. Okay, I'm not sure why they're rostered in so many leagues, but I had to put this out there just in case. All right, so moving on. We're going to keep a close eye on Jaylen Brown, Ben Simmons, Malcolm Brogdon, and Josh Giddey. All right, Jaylen Brown suffered an ankle injury in the first quarter of Tuesday's game. The full extent of the injury hasn't been announced, but it should be coming soon after team doctors get a better look. And then Ben Simmons. Simmons is now considered week to week. He hasn't been able to do 5-on-5 workouts with his team, and there's no timetable when he will be able to do that. It's possible that he misses the entire month of March, but hold on as long as you can if you have the IL spot. If you don't, then make the drop immediately. And then Malcolm Brogdon. All right, Brogdon has been battling an Achilles injury all year, but he did make his return back on February 25th. He did rest on back-to-backs, which is a trend that should continue rest of season. If the Pacers fall even more out of contention, it wouldn't surprise me if they just straight up shut him down. So just keep an eye on him as the season goes on. And if he requires a rest at any time during your fantasy playoffs, then make the drop and stream. And then Josh Giddey, Thunder head coach, said, quote, "It could be a minute." And he's not, quote, day to day. That's tough news for fantasy managers to hear. So with OKC playing for lottery balls, make the cut if you need the extra IL spot. And those are all the injured fantasy basketball players that we should either be cutting outright or think about cutting if we need an extra push to make the playoffs. All right. I can't stress this enough. If any of these players who have an unknown return date are costing your team an active roster spot, please drop them for either a hot free agent or just stream. Okay. Too many times I've seen teams hold on to fantasy studs and it costs them either making the playoffs or advancing in the playoffs. Once the playoffs start, we go all in, guys. And do not be afraid to drop these guys so we can live to fight and compete another day. All right. And thank you so much for tuning in. All right. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed today's content and comment below if you agree or if you just think I'm crazy. All right. You can find me on Twitter at Ain't Done Yet, and done is spelled D-U-N-N-E. God bless, and let's win you a fantasy title. All right. Cheers.